So I think we touched on this a little bit, but I do want to go into like the process of actually getting licensed and like what the licenses are. And I know like there's 3 essential license that you would get, and you take it step by step. One thing that when we did the test, there was kids who took like all 3 at once, and which is so fun that like you could just get every license on the same day.
Yep, you can.
But if you want to explain a little more about the process.
Yeah, so there are 3 levels in the U.S. at least. They're called technician, then general, then extra. Mm-hmm. And so they each bring different privileges along with them. So technician is your entry-level license.
That's what I have.
It's a great license to have because it gives you access to all the frequencies above 30 megahertz that amateurs are allowed to use. Yeah. And that's a lot, okay? So including some stuff in the Wi-Fi bands and things. So anything involving satellites or local repeater-based communication you would use for emergencies and that sort of thing, that's all covered by technician. Mm-hmm. General requires a little bit more knowledge of how radio waves propagate around the world, because the frequencies that lets you use are all the ones below 30 megahertz. These lower frequencies are what they're similar to shortwave. If you ever listen to shortwave radio, those waves travel across the world. So you need a little specialized knowledge to use those bands. So general lets you use, those are the really exciting ones that bend around the ionosphere and stuff. And that's kind of classical amateur radio was in those bands.
Right.
Extra is kind of for bragging rights. So that one is the most technically advanced of all the exams. Technician in general are 35 multiple choice questions. Extra is 50 questions. And it just covers a lot more material.
Right.
Stuff that stuff that was covered in my classes in electrical engineering, maybe my junior, senior years of college.
Yeah.
It gets pretty deep. And that just gives you a little bit, kind of these exclusive regions of the bands at the low end of each of the frequency bands that hams are allowed to use. So that's where like some old timers hang out and send really fast Morse code to each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think you're allowed to shorten your call sign by 1 letter. So when you're licensed, you get a call sign, a collection of letters and a number that kind of uniquely identifies you on the air as a licensed operator. And you get that as soon as you pass your technician exam. So the basic process is you come into a licensing session. It needs to be done by a group of hams that are accredited to give examinations. So
what is that? Is that like a process to get accredited to do that, or?
Yeah, it's a pretty small process. I mean, there are things called volunteer examiner coordinators, and they're just basically, they kind of organize the licensing for the government. The government, FCC has delegated this responsibility to basically volunteer organizations like the ARRL, the American Radio Relay League, which is like a lobbying group. And also they promote amateur radio in the US. There's a few other of these groups that basically just organize the exams as part of their existence. So they make sure that the examiners know how to give the exams, and then they're allowed to do it. So you just have to look online. There's exam sessions everywhere, and now they're online, so you can sign up for an online exam too. You don't even have to leave and go to a place now to do it.
Yeah. Nice.
And then the exam is 35 multiple choice questions for the technician level. You need like a 70% or so to pass, and then they grade it there, and if you pass, they'll send your information to FCC and you'll get your license eventually.
And what license level are you?
I have the extra license. So I got my technician when I was 11. In high school, so maybe when I was 16 or so, I got the general. And then at the end of college, I got the extra.
Okay. So like after all, like the electrical engineering classes and stuff
that made a lot
would generally
easier.
Be on it.
But it was still a lot of studying actually, because it's just covers
it's
such a breadth.
Too, like in the topic of ham radio. So like you have the experience of your like electrical engineering classes and everything, and then you study for this test that's focused in radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my technician license, hopefully. One of the, maybe, I very soon hope to get the general. Extra will probably fall quite later.
This would be good timing to get general because we're in the midst of this solar cycle. Okay, so the sun matters a lot for the frequencies you use as a general, the ones that bounce around the ionosphere. The ionosphere is going to be really hopping in the next 2 or 3 years because we're getting to like this maximum in the solar sunspot cycle. So the sun has all these sunspots on it, these little black spots, or they almost look like little blemishes on the surface where there's like really strong magnetic field that prevents convection of gases or something, so they end up looking dark. But that's emitting all sorts of solar radiation that ionizes our outer atmosphere, and that makes it a much better radio reflector.
Oh, interesting.
So it takes the signals and diffracts them back to Earth, and you can get more bounces and stuff to go essentially use the atmosphere as your reflector.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And we're getting to that peak now. It's every 11 years you get a peak.
Oh, wow.
So in about 2025, I think we're going to be at the absolute peak of the cycle. And it's just been, so conditions, they call them the band conditions, have been getting better and better and better every year. You'll be surprised where your signals go.
Yeah.